Hello, my name is B-Town and I make videos about games I love. Today we are going to be ranking the entire Far Cry franchise from worst to best. These weren't easy to rank because honestly, Far Cry is kind of like pizza. Even a bad Far Cry is pretty good. I highly encourage you to play each and every one of the games on this list, even the bad ones. There really aren't that many Far Cry games overall, so we're not going to be using any tier lists today. But I am going to start off with the unranked section. It's kind of like a dishonorable mention. First up, we have Far Cry Vengeance. This is a Wii port of Far Cry 1 released in 2006. Apparently it runs like trash and it's really bad. I never played it and won't be tracking down a copy anytime soon, so I didn't want to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. Second up, we have Far Cry VR Dive into Insanity. This is a location-based VR experience in partnership with a company called Zero Latency VR. You can play it at a bunch of different places, and according to the website, it's still live. So if you're ever in Branson, Missouri and want to teach Boss the definition of insanity in real life, be my guest. But with that, let's get down to business. The worst Far Cry game of all time, and this one's going to be kind of controversial, I apologize in advance. Far Cry Primal. Wait, don't dislike the video yet. Primal is an extraordinarily well-made game. It came out after Far Cry 4 and takes place on a portion of that map, but it rolls back the clock to 10,000 BC. It fundamentally shakes up the Far Cry formula, turning the power fantasy on its head. You play as a human, and you are on the bottom of the food chain. There are a bunch of creatures like saber-toothed tigers and whatnot that'll rip you to shreds. So the game plays much more like a survival game rather than a traditional Far Cry game. The art is gorgeous, and they even created their own unique language. The team at Ubisoft really committed to doing something special with Primal, and I'm incredibly happy that this is part of the franchise. It's also where animal companions were introduced. Primal is a fantastic game, but for me it's the least appealing. The melee system in this game is so basic and repetitive, the game just wears me out. Oh, and side note, aim assist is on by default on PC, and it does really weird things with your mouse, so it's gonna take a little bit extra time to get that dialed in correctly. This game played like absolute trash for an hour before I got it all sorted out. I really dislike this game, but I do think that that's a me issue, and I definitely do not care about cave people at all. I just can't connect to the story emotionally, my brain just turns off. It's really harsh to rank such an expertly made title last, but it's definitely the least likely game I would go back and play. It was honestly a chore just to get a couple of minutes of footage for this video. Over the last few years, this game has had a renaissance in the community. People are coming out and saying how much they enjoy it and appreciate it. So give it a shot if you like cave people. Far Cry Instincts. This is a console port of the original Far Cry. At the time, this game kind of slapped, but man is it tough to play now. It's clunky and linear and really only looks like Far Cry if you stand across the room and squint. When mom says you have Far Cry at home. If you haven't played all of them, you might be surprised to know that Far Cry started off as a sci-fi series. One of the things Instincts introduced compared to the PC version of the original game were feral abilities. They were like these animalistic powers. They were implemented better in later games. In the original Instincts, they took way too long to charge. I assume they had to trim the experience heavily to run on consoles at the time. Instincts is basically a Far Cry themed corridor shooter. It would be fair to describe it as a tropical themed typing of the dead with dog shit console controller aim. Far Cry. The original Far Cry released in 2004, which makes it old enough to drink. It's not exactly what you would call an open world by today's standards, but it did give the player an unparalleled level of freedom in terms of how they wanted to approach combat scenarios. It was a semi-open world adventure where you play as Jack Carver, an ex-Special Forces operative caught in the middle of a crazy plot on a tropical island. The original Far Cry was made by Crytek. Get it? Far Cry. They also made Crysis. Not the most creative in terms of names, but their engines were ahead of their time. It may not look amazing now, but Far Cry was at least 2 generations ahead in terms of graphics. Ubisoft acquired the rights to Far Cry in March of 2006, along with the engine, which eventually became the Dunia engine. From a modern perspective, going back 20 plus years is rough. The game ran pretty well and looked pretty good despite this weird seam in the skybox. But it is so hard, punishing. I didn't have any fun at all. It's brutal in a way that only 2004 could produce. About halfway through the game, the plot kicks in and you start fighting Trigens, a genetically altered beast created by the game's antagonist, Krieger. I don't have any footage of them because the game kicked my ass too hard and I refuse to keep playing. This game is unfair and mean-spirited in only a way a retro FPS game could be. It's a classic, a game I remember fondly, and also something I hope to never ever play again. Far Cry New Dawn.
Everything's about the now. No investment in anything, no plans for the future. They do what they want, when they want, without a care in the world for who or what that might affect. Be careful!
The characters in this game are so annoying. And before you start thinking this is misogyny, my character is a spunky cowgirl, so this abuse is street legal.
Yeah! You should do it. That fucking hurt!
New Dawn is a spin-off game released after Far Cry 5. Spoiler, I guess, for 5, but I mean, at this point, I think you should probably know this. In one of the endings, Joseph Seed detonates a nuke in Hope County. This game picks up a few years later as the survivors rebuild while being terrorized by a gang called the Highwaymen. The gang is run by a pair of twins who might be the worst villains in the Far Cry franchise. Part of what makes them so cringe is their aesthetic. Why did they give them all an extreme sport BMX look? I cannot take you seriously when you're dressed like you're in the movie Rad. It feels like a choice that was made just so they were legally distinguishable from Raiders and Fallout, but you did sneak some mole rats in there. I see you, Ubisoft, trying to be slick. I have to admit, the overall visuals don't bother me. Instead of a drab, blown-out apocalypse, they went with a gorgeous Super Bloom style. Some people hate the pink, but it works for me. I think the game actually looks pretty great overall. And they changed enough from Far Cry 5 that I didn't really mind that they reused the map. That was fine. Where this game really falls apart is in its mechanics. It's like resource gathering and enemy levels. It feels super wrong for a Far Cry game. It artificially staggers your progress, hampers exploration, and just makes the game feel so grindy. All of the changes here don't feel like they were implemented to make the game better for players. These are here to pad the short gameplay and incentivize buying resources from the shop. It's the kind of scummy thing Ubisoft was doing in all of their franchises at the time. Under all of the bad decisions and unnecessary systems, this game could have been pretty good. The combat is solid, the weapons are crazy, like the saw blade launcher that ricochets, but you can't even adjust attachments on your gun despite the entire game revolving around gathering resources. There are just so many odd design choices that make even less sense when you look at them all together. Although it's cliche to say it, I truly believe it. New Dawn should have just been a DLC for 5.
Our boss Bean is in a bit of a jam. One of our former colleagues ripped him off in a bad way.
I'm hurt bad!
Our boss Bean is in a bit of a jam. One of our former colleagues ripped him off in a bad way. You help him out? I'm sure he'll reward you with all that Wikipedia has to offer.
Shit! It's bad! It's really, really bad!
Far Cry Instincts Evolution. Great name, really rolls off the tongue. This is a breaking point in the list for me. All of the previous games are titles I probably wouldn't replay on my own. Evolution is totally something I'd play outside of making a video. This is another console exclusive, and it was a direct sequel to the original Instincts. This game isn't that bad. It's linear and still pretty clunky. The story is pure camp, but it's cheesy perfection. This time around, they didn't vary the good stuff. You get your feral abilities really early in the game. Almost right away, you're slicing and dicing through enemies like a Walmart brand Wolverine. This game is really dumb, but I actually loved it. You get dual wield weapons, which as far as I know was legally required for all games made the decade following The Matrix. It's hot, steamy trash, but in a good way. And it also has a less than 0 chance of causing a sexual awakening. Far Cry 6. You know, this game isn't as bad as people say it is. Let me get this point out of the way right up front. If you've never ever played a Far Cry game before, this is a totally reasonable place to start. The core conversation surrounding this game was centered on this is just more Far Cry. But guess what? That doesn't matter if you haven't played a ton of the franchise. This is a mad decent game. This installment takes place on an island called Yara, a Caribbean paradise that's basically just a fictional proxy for Cuba. You play as Danny, a rebel fighting against the local dictator Anton Castillo, played by the always amazing Giancarlo Esposito. That man is a national treasure. From Star Wars to Do the Right Thing, he has never delivered a bad performance. He was heavily featured in the marketing for this game, which would lead you to believe he's in a lot of it. Not true. He is restricted to a few very well-produced cutscenes, and his overall story really isn't that great, which is one reason people were kind of disappointed in this game. You have a great character, a fantastic actor, and he just doesn't get the screen time you want from him. The narrative is one area where Far Cry 6 struggles. The tone is wildly erratic. The characters are really annoying and abrasive. Lots of cringe millennial dialogue. You could play as either a male or female Danny, but I suggest the female because her voice performance is way better. It's also a relatively long game, and it starts to drag out because of the desperate lack of narrative momentum. I mean, even the beginning's ridiculously long. This has the longest prologue section of any Far Cry game. You start the game on a side island where you meet Libertad, that group of resistance fighters who are battling against Castillo. It's a solid hour of gameplay before you head to the main island and unlock the full map. The weapon system's pretty robust and satisfying, except the odd inclusion of multiple ammo types. There are a few options like standard rounds, poison, incendiary, but the only ammo you ever really need is armor piercing. It adds a really unintuitive layer to the gunfights. I don't know what the designers wanted you to do, like quick switch like Doom Eternal or some shit. They also added a new Supremo system, which is a backpack that acts like a regenerating ultimate attack. It's kind of like Marvel Rivals or Destiny. Another area where they put a bunch of options in, but there's really only one or two that actually have any significant game impact. Far Cry 6 got a lot of flack from everyone. It was too samey for casual fans, but it also changed too much for hardcore fans. I think the truth lies somewhere in between. If you skip this one because of the negative conversation, give it a shot. At least play the prologue. If you don't like it, you could just take the secret early ending and escape to Miami. Far Cry Blood Dragon. Before I glaze the hell out of this game, one word of caution. The Steam version of this game, I don't know if they shut down the servers or what's happening, but anytime you try to open up the menu, it checks for the server, doesn't find it, and basically freezes your computer for like 30 or 40 seconds. It's super fucking annoying, which is a shame because this is one of my favorite Far Cry games of all time. It was a standalone expansion for Far Cry 3. It was released during the Xbox arcade era. It was a separate game, but it kept the Far Cry 3 name, so it's a little bit confusing. This is a real love it or hate it situation. You either get the joke and enjoy it, or it falls totally flat. Blood Dragon is an intentionally goofy love letter to 80s action. You play as Rex Power Colt, who is voiced by Michael Biehn himself. The world is a total overhaul of a section of the South Island from the main game, but there are new enemies, objectives, and fucking dragons. This game is so tongue-in-cheek. Fans loved it at the time. Ubisoft keeps putting references to Blood Dragon in other games, but they still haven't made Blood Dragon 2 because they must be allergic to money. It's so silly and so chaotic and so over the top. It's everything I love about Far Cry in one game. I would pay any amount of money for a full Blood Dragon game. They just don't make them like they used to. I wish companies still did DLC like this. Like, fuck selling me skins for $20. Do something interesting and creative and funny. Break the formula. Try something different. There's a reason Far Cry fans still know and love Blood Dragon to this day. It left such an impression on the fan base. We demand more Blood Dragon, please. Far Cry 3. This game is probably on top of many people's lists. I love it deeply and truly. I don't always finish it, but I play it at least once a year. Boss isn't just one of the greatest Far Cry villains, he's one of the best video game villains of all time. But that's where my criticism begins. Michael Mando's performance in this game is iconic, and then once you defeat Voss, the rest of the game just kind of falls apart in the middle. I basically quit playing when it's time to head to the South Island and battle Hoyt. He just doesn't hold a candle to Voss. This game set the formula for the franchise. It has deep meaning and intense nostalgia, but I think it's only half a great game. But let's dig in a little bit deeper. Rook Island is an outstanding tropical location, and the game just feels right. Almost too right. I actually have a bit of resentment for Far Cry 3. They made so many improvements to the gameplay and systems from Far Cry 2. Hunting, crafting, outposts, an actual functional stealth system. But I think Ubisoft was a little bit too content with the improvements they made going into Far Cry 3. They stopped innovating and started iterating. Since Far Cry 3, we've had similar missions like burning crops or going on a drug trip. The same core systems, just kind of remixed a little bit to make them appear fresh, but really they're not. This game is excellent, and I certainly don't blame it specifically, but Ubisoft has run everything that was great about this game into the ground. Going back and playing it makes it feel a lot less special in the modern era. All the repetition makes you feel kind of insane.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
Come on, you know I had to make that joke. All the games after Far Cry 3 kind of feel like they're living in its shadow. 3 even had the best main character. You play as Jason Brody in this game, a named protagonist with a well-defined journey on a quest to save his friends after they're captured on a wild vacation. He's a great character with a powerful arc that still hits super hard. One of the best stories in the Far Cry franchise. This was also the first game that really fleshed out the wildlife system, which was that last little thing that the open world needed. This game is a 10 out of 10, but it's number 4 on my list because the rest of the games just feel more complete. If Voss was more present and alive throughout the entire game, this would easily be my number 1. Far Cry 2. I went into this video thinking I was going to put Far Cry 2 in the number 1 spot. It is a legendary game. Released in 2008, you play as a mercenary in a fictional African country engulfed in a civil war. You get to select your own character, but it doesn't really matter. The only thing it really changes are your hands on screen and where you start the game. Your mission? Hunt down an arms dealer named the Jackal, who may or may not be Jack Carver, the protagonist from the first Far Cry game. It was confirmed by developers and some of the file names within Far Cry 2, but it hasn't really been added to canon. I believe it though. I think the Jackal is Jack Carver. Jack Carver, come on. Ubi really swung for the fences. This was the first truly open world entry in the franchise, and oh my god, it's so perfect. The atmosphere and immersion are just simply unmatched. It's all about the details too, like the weapons degrade over time, jamming and failing in the middle of a gunfight. The fire propagation in Far Cry 2 was also a huge technical leap forward. You could set the brush on fire and flush out enemies. The fire will actually spread naturally. And the soundtrack. Far Cry 2 is not a perfect game. Fuck malaria. There's technically wildlife, but they weren't really perfected yet, and it has very serious issues running on modern hardware. One thing I'd love to mention here, although it debuted in Far Cry Instincts, my fondest memories of the map editor are from Far Cry 2. It's not live on PC anymore, but the map server is still functional on the Xbox 360 version, so you know your boy had to boot up and showcase some gems. Like this one, somebody actually recreated the battle for Zion from the Matrix Revolutions. We used to play on this Terminator map for some reason, like all the time back in the day. I vividly remember somebody made Mordor from Lord of the Rings. Far Cry 2 is so unique. There really isn't another game like it. And not just in the Far Cry franchise, there's just no other game that comes close. Far Cry 5. Your time is now, Faith enjoyers. When Far Cry 5 was announced, people were super skeptical of a Far Cry game set in America. But goddamn, Hope County delivers. This is probably one of my favorite maps in the series. You play as a deputy sent to stop a doomsday cult led by Joseph Seed. This game is a really great package. Great story, awesome questing, and tons of open world shenanigans. Side quests are particularly good in Far Cry 5, with some of the funniest and most interesting parts of the experience being left for the player to discover organically. They even get the little stuff super right. I think the fishing mini game is really satisfying. The arsenal is dope. You get a ton of great guns and of course a full suite of vehicles for land, sea, and air. The map editor returns and it's better than ever. They really fleshed it out with the Far Cry Arcade, a place where you can discover, play, and share player creations. While recording for this video, I found a really rad recreation of Fallout 3. The animal companions from Far Cry Primal also return. You can partner up with a diabetic bear named Cheeseburger. Why would you ever pick another companion? Well, I mean, you probably should partner with somebody else. Like, this game's actually really easy, and when you use Cheeseburger, it's basically autopilot. But being easy doesn't hurt the experience. This game's really grown on me over the years. I enjoyed it at launch, but I just keep coming back to it over and over again. There's really only one major flaw, and that's the resistance system. As you play in different regions of the game, you raise a resistance meter. Basically, anything you do counts towards that level, saving people, doing side quests, and eventually the meter will fill up and then you're abducted by the leader of that region and forced into a mission. It's unavoidable and kind of annoying. It just breaks up the flow of the gameplay. And it makes the bad guys seem really, really dumb. It's just a poorly conceived way to progress the open world. But obviously they know that it didn't come back for Far Cry 6. In the moment, it's really frustrating, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it dampened my enjoyment of Far Cry 5. It's just something you have to be aware of when you're playing. You're like, oh, here we go. I got to play a 20-minute bunker mission for no good goddamn reason. And I don't know why, maybe it's the outrageous nature of the Far Cry franchise, but I think America really works as a setting. Hope County's awesome, but this game is only number 2 on our list. By process of elimination, you could probably tell which one is number 1, but before we get into it, I just want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. Your continued support means everything to me. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. But alright, final game on our list, the best Far Cry game of all time, Far Cry 4. This game is peak, mountaintop peak. You play as Ajay, a man who returns to his home country of Karat to scatter his mother's ashes. Immediately upon entering the country, all hell breaks loose, and you meet Pagan Min, the charming yet psychopathic ruler, and get swept away with the Golden Path, a faction of local rebels dedicated to taking down Pagan. The story features some level of player choice, giving you the occasional option to side with one of the 2 leaders of the rebellion, either Sabal or Amida. Those choices feel pretty hollow though, because both of them are really terrible people. No spoilers, but they're both just awful. I wish I could side with Pagan. I just want to bomb around with him. He could use so much more screen time as well, but he is present throughout the entire game via radios and phone calls in a much more direct way than Voss ever was. The art is gorgeous, the combat is crispy, the wildlife is even more chaotic than ever. Of all the Far Cry games, this one seems to have the most random animal attacks for some reason. That is not a complaint that is a pro in my book. I love when the sandbox gets really crazy. When you're like getting attacked and then a bird swooping in and then a tiger's attacking and an elephant runs through and things are blowing up. Oh, this game's epic. When it was released, Far Cry 4 got labeled as a lazy copy and paste sequel to Far Cry 3. I could not disagree more. This game evolved everything that was great about 3. The gunplay, exploration, crafting, everything feels perfect in Far Cry 4. The difficulty has been ramped up as well. Base Kirat feels kind of like you're starting on the South Island of Far Cry 3. They also added co-op, a first for the series. That was huge. You get to actually bomb around in Far Cry with your friends. There are, of course, some issues. Chief among them, the story and side quests. They just feel a little flat. Maybe they're mid. Maybe I've just played them 20 times. But Ajay is no Jason Brody. We could put it that way. There are some really interesting turns to the story that I won't spoil here. And I actually think the ending is incredible. Like, it is a heart-stopping moment where I'm not going to say the entire plot twists on its head, but oh my God, you just get this like new perspective on the world, on Pagan Min, on everything, and it's kind of blissful actually, and it is kind of one of the reasons why I think Pagan is one of the best antagonists in the franchise. But I do think it's fair to criticize the story because the quote-unquote good parts don't come online until way late in the game. As presented on face value for the majority of the game, the story's pretty flat. You have to really kind of plow through it all, get through many hours of gameplay before the story heats up. When it's all said and done, very satisfying, but maybe not the most engaging thing throughout. But the story is just an excuse to do whatever you want. Come on, you get to ride elephants. Do you not want to ride an elephant? Does that not sound fun to you? Far Cry 4 is a true adventure. It maximizes everything that makes this franchise awesome. And in my opinion, it is the best Far Cry game of all time. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to drop a comment and let me know which Far Cry game is your favorite. So let me know what you think and let's have a conversation. Seriously, I love that shit. This isn't like engagement bait YouTuber talk. I really like talking to people in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have an awesome day and we'll talk again really soon.